Welcome to the Real Estate Dads podcast, where we make content for dads and we raise money for real estate. And today we have on the show Andrew Del Rey. Andrew is an individual I've known for over 12 years, which is, can't believe it's been that long since I've known you. And Andrew's got some really fantastic insights on both his own role of being a dad and also a ministry that he started that works with homeless individuals. And the reason this is important, and we talk about this a lot on this show, is we talk about how important dads are for families, and we talk about how important they are in keeping kids to be not at-risk kids. So, and I know that's not completely what happens within a lot of these individuals who are homeless, but he is absolutely fighting the good fight and winning in regards to what their ministry has done to assist with the homeless crisis. So, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
The reason we had him here to talk about, a fantastic ministry that he's created that works with the homeless. And Andrew, I'm going to have you explain exactly what your ministry does.
Sure. So the ministry is called LOTS, LOTS, and it stands for Life on the Streets Ministry. And basically what we do, we're all about transforming the individual. But how do we do that? And why do we do it? It is a Christian-based organization. And there's a scripture in the Bible in Matthew 25, 40 through 45 that talks about doing to the least of these. And it talks about, I was naked and I needed clothing. I was hungry. I needed to be fed. I was lonely and I needed company. And so in that scripture, it talks about the people saying, well, if I knew it was you, God, I would have done it for you. And then God responds and says, no, if you do it for the least of these, you've done it unto me. So over about 15 years ago, there was a lady by the name of Cindy Massaro. She was homeschooling her kids in Costa Mesa. For lunch, they would go to a local park called Wilson Park. And Wilson Park is an interesting place because it's sort of at the crossroads of affluent Newport Beach and very poor west side Costa Mesa. And so there was a lot of homeless in this park. So anyway, Cindy, you have to know her. She is not just a believer, but a follower and a servant. So she goes there, and the kids are playing in this park, and they see a lot of homeless people. And she did not want to not go to the park because there's homeless people. On the contrary, she wanted to engage. So she would go there day after day after day. And our friends that were experiencing homelessness took an interest. Like, this lady comes all the time, every day, having lunch in the park. Slowly but surely, they became friends. Slowly but surely, they started to share lunch together. And this started to grow. As it grew, they started to have some very interesting conversations. And during this time, she would observe organizations coming into the park and dropping things off. They would drop off blankets. They would drop off backpacks. They would drop off hygiene kits, whatever. And they sort of drop them off and leave and everything. Well, as time went on and the relationship grew, she asked a very simple question. She said, we see all these groups coming in and they're dropping things off, and we just want to know, what is it that you really want? What is it that you really need? The way they answered kind of took her by surprise. And they said, well, gosh, by the way, if you and I were to say, hey, what do you think the top 3 answers to this questions would be? Okay, number 1 would be, I'd love a home, a roof over my head. Or I would love, number 2, I'd love some money. I would love a job. I would love whatever. But that's not what they said. Unanimously, they said, oh, we just want to belong.
I'm so glad you didn't say alcohol and drugs. I totally thought that's where you were going to go.
No, I know. You would think that, right?
Sadly, that was where my mind went to. So, but that's why I'm glad to hear that it was not. So, okay. So they said belonging.
They belonging. So we're like, oh, okay. What do you mean by that? They go, well, we don't get acknowledged, right? People don't even look at us. We're dirty. We look dirty. We smell dirty, and we are dirty. And so we don't even get acknowledged. And it was interesting because there's a quote by Mother Teresa that says that man's greatest poverty is loneliness. And when you start putting those two things together, you start to understand their plight. So, of course, in our minds, we're not experienced social workers or anything. We thought, okay, well, we can do something about that. So we started to have these these events. And so what we would do is we'd provide pizza, because we'd do it at night. We'd do dinner. We'd have pizza, we'd have change, and we'd have detergent. We'd meet at laundromats. So we thought, well, we'll get their clothes clean. That will solve the problem, right? And again, like I said, we're not trained in this. We're not formally trained. We don't understand that. We're just trying to. We heard a need, and we were trying to respond to it. So we started to frequent this laundromat on Newport Boulevard. And, it worked for a little bit, but, our clientele, our guests, they're a little different. And so it started to chase away the regular clients. And so we got shut down by the owner and we got shut down by the city. So we thought, okay, well, what can we do? And right about that time, we were talking to some families.
I'm sorry, the city shut you down.
Yeah.
The city came in and said, we don't want to work with you helping homeless people wash their clothes.
They didn't really say it like that. They said, hey, you can't operate this ministry in this public place. And again, it was I don't know the laws associated with that. I don't know that they could have done it, but we kind of appreciated what they were saying. And we didn't want to be a burden on this business owner's business. So we acquiesced. We said, okay, great. So we continued the lunches in the park. By the way, that ministry grew. It grew in terms of numbers of our friends that were experiencing homelessness. And then also in terms of families were bringing their kids. And then pretty soon it was just people coming and they were bringing food that we could all share and eat together, right? Again, us not serving them food and we're eating together. We're just sharing lunch, right? There's a difference there,
sure,
in dignity. Anyway, about this time,
what's acknowledging them?
Yeah,
is what your comment.
Absolutely, it's not us and them. No. It's just us.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we're just friends.
Yeah,
right. And so anyway, and that sort of again that goes back to the response to that question. What is it that you really want? We want to belong. If it was just a need thing, they would just say, "Oh well, we need." And then fill in the blank. But no, it isn't that. So we had created this relationship with them and they were really responding to it. So anyway, about the time that we got shut down of our laundry pizza ministry, there were some families that knew that we were doing. And Cindy's husband, by the way, is an architect. And that's important in the story because we had these families that donated their weekend warrior. It was a 22-foot trailer. And they brainstormed the ideas like, hey, we'll create a laundry mat in this 22-foot trailer. And it's like, yeah, we can do this. So this family donated this 22-foot trailer and they donated a truck to pull it. Tony, because he's an architect, designed this self-contained trailer that has 7 washers and 7 dryers in it. So we had that. And during this time, our church at the time that we were going to, Rock Harbor Church, which is in Costa Mesa, we used to have this day where we didn't go to church. And all the different churches in all the different areas of Costa Mesa would take a day off of church. And all they would do is go out into the city and bless the city. They would just do different things. They would go to areas that needed some landscaping and they'd do landscaping. They'd go some areas that needed some painting. They would paint it, whatever it was they would do. And it was called Serve Day. Well, during this time, we developed a relationship with the Crossing Church, which is very close to Wilson Park, which we were operating our lunch ministry. So anyway, there's a guy by the name of Terry Moore there, and he said, hey, we should partner. You could bring your trailer, your 22-foot trailer, you can operate this laundry ministry at the church. And it's in that cross-section of where the homeless would gather. And so right about the time that we were getting ready to launch the laundry ministry with the laundry trailer, this other family in Los Angeles learned about what we were doing and they were fascinated with it. And they go, hey, we got this 15-foot trailer with 2 showers in it and we have a truck. Do you want it? Yes, this is fantastic. Now, us as believers and Christ followers and servants, we say, again, we don't serve a God of coincidences. We we call this the invisible hand of God is always working. We just don't always see it. And then it manifests itself in things like this. So it was quite interesting. So we're donated this already turnkey 15-foot trailer with 2 showers in it. So perfect, right? We're going to offer showers and we're going to offer laundry. And it's awesome. So day one, I have pictures of it. We show up. And we told our friends on Wednesday, that's when our lunch ministry is.
And where are you right now? So where's this location?
This location is on Newport Boulevard. It's like Newport and Victoria.
Okay.
And that's where the Crossing Church is.
Okay.
And they're a huge player in this ministry because they allow us to bring our trailers there. They allow us to operate there.
Yeah, it's huge. I can see this being a difficult thing for a lot of other owners to get behind. So it's great that they actually
It doesn't work without them. It really doesn't, because we need their special power, right? It's not, what is it? It's not or it is.
It's enough to run a lot of heavy machinery.
Exactly. And they have sewage there so we can dump, and they also have water. So we hook up to all of this. Day one that we do this, and this was January, almost 13 years ago. This January will be 13 years. And so we pull up and we start our bed, and there's almost nobody there. And there's a few handful of our homeless friends that are there. And we asked them, we go, why aren't there more people? I mean, the park, we have 100 people there. Where is everybody? And they go, oh, well, they had to choose between getting a meal and getting their clothes cleaned and taking a shower.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay.
So I said, well, I can figure something out. I came from a large family of 7 kids, and I used to cook breakfast on Sunday morning. So I thought, I know how to do that. So I went to the store and I said, listen, I want to get the word out that on Saturday mornings when we operate our laundry and shower ministries, we're going to serve breakfast. Get the word out. So I went to Smart and Final. I bought just everything that you could imagine that needed these big pots. I bought 20 dozen eggs. I bought onions and peppers and cream cheese and bread and you name it, just everything that would go. I wanted it to be a good breakfast, not something that looked like we were patronizing, but something that said, we're intentionally doing something great.
Sure.
Not good, but great. So anyway, the next Saturday, lo and behold, we had over 120 people there. So we were cooking, kind of faltering through this thing. We were cooking breakfast, and our shower units were going, our laundry units were going, and it just started to affect everybody. And I call this the perfect ministry. Why? Because it transforms everybody. So I don't care if you're new on the streets, if you've been on the streets, or if you're a volunteer, you're going to get affected. It's going to change you and who you are. So in our tenure of 12 plus years, we've been successful in getting approximately 500 of our friends off the streets and or reunited with their families.
Which is great. That's such a great stat.
Yeah.
And that's one thing to everyone who's watching. We talk about homelessness on this podcast a lot. We do because everyone. Well, it's such a hot topic within real estate. Also, because it's the situation where the government is trying to fix it, but it seems like it's I'll call it a black hole. Actually, it seems like there's so much money going into. I don't want to say anything that's so degrading to individuals who are homeless, because it's one of these situations where the government is paying so much money out, but it doesn't seem like they're actually doing anything to help them get off the street. It seems like it's a lot of things that are really allowing being homeless to be, I guess very specifically what I'm talking about are needle exchanges. These places that really are almost kind of like, will help you to kind of just stay homeless, as opposed to really what you're describing is bring back dignity, get them cleaned up, help them have a clean meal, be treated like real people, because for a lot of people who are homeless, the idea of having them not be homeless is very, you almost hear the term that they're entrenched in being homeless,
Mhm.
where they, asking them to come back to work a 9 to 5 job, to pay taxes, to have a boss who's telling them what to do. To not do drugs. I mean, these are things that they said no to a long time ago in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, where they went, hey, I'd rather just live as an urban camper.
Mhm.
But then getting them out of that place, like, how do you do that? And, that's the reason why I always liked this ministry. When you first told me about it,
Yeah.
helping them get cleaned up first, and also, so you also have done haircuts and other hygiene stuff
so
too.
there's a couple of things. You said something, and I want to give Costa Mesa credit. I said something about them sort of participating and shutting our ministry down, but they've come full circle, and I really want to compliment the city of Costa Mesa and Orange County as a whole. And here's what I mean. Um, we've come full circle in the point of it seemed antagonistic at the beginning. Hey, you're doing these services, you're going to attract more homeless. We don't want more homeless. Right?
I think that's generally the concern everyone has, or especially what I'm mentioning, where the budgets go in and
sure.
Yeah.
And they would tell you there was a city councilman by the name of Rick Francis. There's more of them. Believe me, there's a bunch. But he comes to mind, and I really, really appreciated him. And he started to observe. They started to come. They started to see what we were doing. And thank God, look. At the end of the day, working with the homeless and doing these kinds of ministries, it's messy business. It's messy business because, again, I don't know if the cameras can see me, but I've got my arms stretched out. This is homelessness. So on this side, you've got people that are incarcerated and they just get out and they have nowhere to go. Okay. And then over on this side, you've got rehabilitatable people on this end. Okay. And then everything in between. And everything in between is largely mental illness. So homelessness is largely not an economical issue. Yes, there's economies that will bless this ministry for sure, but it's a mental illness issue. Now, why are they mentally ill? It could be because they're drug affected. They've taken so many drugs. They're drug affected. Their mind is permanently damaged.
And I guess I do want to interrupt a little bit. They've lost purpose. Their purpose of life is missing. And this is something, and I guess when I'm talking about, content for dads, I know from personal experience from a lot of people who just say, when your life is missing purpose, it's easy to fall away from that. If you don't have family that's there to help you, you can fall away from that. And this is one thing that is a reason that I'm so an active proponent of being an engaged father, is because I see a lot of individuals, and and you'll hear people talk about this where they say, young men with poor emotional control will end up in trouble, legal trouble. They bad emotional control will cause them to make bad decisions, create a violent act, rob a store, do drugs, do these things that cause them issue over the course of their life. And I know that it's not 100% of individuals who don't have dads. I'm not saying that, but I do have a strong recognition that, having a father figure that is there to assist and be there for these at-risk youth is, I shouldn't call them at-risk youth. You have the father, hopefully they're not at risk, but my point is that, not having an active dad can really encourage, a direction towards some.
Oh yeah. I've got so many stories. I'll give you one. There's a guy, I will call him Jim, just to protect his identity. And I met Jim early on in our ministry, and he told me he had a drug business with his father, and they had weed farms and other drugs that they were selling. And anyway, at one point, Jim has a girlfriend, and they have a baby together, and they talked about, I guess, getting married. And one day, they were at the in-laws' house, and his future brother-in-law shows up with a shotgun and blows the baby away. And then he shoots the family. He actually shoots my friend Jim, and Jim goes through a door, and he's left for dead. And then he basically blows away the family and then shoots himself in the head. Jim is rescued by a neighbor, and he's taken to the hospital, and he survives. And Jim told me one day, so Jim is telling me this the day that I meet him at our ministry, and at the time he was homeless. And he said, Andrew, I used to believe in God just so I could curse him. And I did every day. And so he, as you could imagine, this would mess anybody up. He was already on drugs. He was selling drugs. He had a father that was in the drug selling business. And then he has this horrific thing happened. And so he's on the streets, and he meets another friend of his that was experiencing homelessness, and this person is the life is starting to transform.
Mm.
And she shares with him, "Hey, you got to go to this church. I went to this church. Oh my gosh, they're so great. They're wonderful. It's really speaking to me. It's changing me." And he says, "There's no way I'm going to go. I'm not going to this church." And he goes, "I know what they're going to do. They're going to feed me, and then they're going to preach at me. And I don't want that."
Mm.
Right? And again, he's still in this anger. He blames God for this thing that happened. And so anyway, this person is very persistent, and he decides, okay, I'm going to go. I got nothing else to do. But it takes him 3 hours to walk to this particular church. So he goes, and what do? They did feed him, and they did preach at him. So he's at church, and he's there, and he turns to her and he says, "I'm out of here."
Mm-hmm.
And so he turns around, he starts to leave, and he sees a bathroom. He goes, "Well, I'm going to get a drink of water, and I'm going to go to the bathroom because I've got a long walk to wherever home, quote unquote, home is." So he goes to the bathroom, and the bathroom has got these speakers so that they can continue to hear the message.
Yeah.
And I don't know why God works in these funny ways, but he goes in there, and for whatever reason, he could hear the message while he's going to the bathroom, and he just stopped and he just started to weep. And he knew he needed to go back in. And that's what he did. So he goes back in, and it was the defining moment. God grabs his heart, completely changes his heart. Did it completely change him in an instant? No, but it changed his heart. And that's where it begins. And so they had some, sort of call. Hey, if you've had this, if you want to follow Christ today, would you stand up? So he stands up. So later that day or that evening, he's starting to walk home, and he's walking home, and this car pulls up and says, "Hey, do you need a ride?" And he's kind of like, "Yeah, why?" And he says, "I was at the church. I saw you stand up." He says, "Great." So he gets into the car, he drives him to wherever he was going to go. And the guy says, the guy who picked him up, the guy at church, was exchanging, "Who are you? What do you do?" And Jim shared his life story with them. And so this guy gave him his car, and that's what he lived in. So when I met Jim, he was living in this car. Since then, Jim has completely turned his life around. He's off drugs, off alcohol. He got married. He got a job, and he is an amazing, amazing Bible teacher.
Bible teacher. How did he come to grips with what occurred to him? I mean, that's such a common. I don't want to say that's a common. That story is so tragic. But you hear of these anger at God stories.
Mm-hmm.
What do and how? How do people come to grips with some of these things in regards to, these tragedies and these events that are, hey, I don't want to believe in a higher power because I see so much pain in the world.
Yeah.
And I guess what are your thoughts regarding?
Well, there's two things. One, it's intellectual. The other part is spiritual. The spiritual tends to come first, sort of the supernatural. There's no explanation for why Tim chose to go to that church that day, or why he broke down in the bathroom. Why that? I don't understand those things.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is God will meet us wherever. And there's an intervention happening, but it is not compulsory. God's not going to make us feel a certain way. God is not going to make us change. When he created us, he also created us with free will. And that's part of it. Now, there's always an invitation. God is always knocking, but we must open that door. I believe that deep down in Jim's heart and in his soul, he knew there was somebody knocking, and he let him in. And I think once that happens, that's where the transformation starts to take place. Then the intellectual part follows. You learn about a loving God, not a hateful God, but a God that allows free will to exist. And so again,
You,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, that's really the crux of it that I think is often missed within faith is, without struggle, there is no triumphing over evil. Because if you have only good, then the reality is, there's no getting better, there's no improving, there's no making the right decisions, there's no overcoming any obstacles, because there are no obstacles to have. And this is, I've had some philosophical debates on, why is there death at all? And part of me just says, well, if there wasn't, then we probably wouldn't treat life very respectfully, because there would be no end. There would be no end. So instead, you have this reality where you go, hey, you got to use this life up to the fullest and make sure you do. And I know that's not directly relating to, such a tragedy this guy went through, but, well, I'll let you continue.
No, so I like what you said, by the way. It reminds me of a C.S. Lewis quote that I know I'm going to butcher, but he talks about a straight line versus a crooked line. How do we know that the straight line's straight? Only because we can see a crooked line. Right. And if there is no, and then what is good if there is no evil? I think it's allowed to happen. Now, we believe that, in the Bible, speaks to our life on earth as being a vapor in terms of eternity, in comparison to eternity.
Yeah.
So in view of the throne, in view of a heaven, yes, there are tragic things that happen on earth. But in view of the throne, in view of heaven, it's minuscule compared to eternity. I would argue, who is at a disadvantage? The privileged person that grows up in Orange County, or a desperate person who needs God in India, let's say, that doesn't have privilege and sees things for they are. I feel sometimes, and this goes to raising children, especially in a place like this where they're so distracted by material objects, they're missing the meaning of life.
I'm a firm believer that your life has to have struggle to improve.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes back to even the comment I made earlier in regards to, life with purpose. People who have purpose, people who are achieving things, people who are doing things that are outside of their current ability level are happier because because they've gained confidences, they've done things that they didn't know they could do that thing. And that whatever that thing is, we were talking about, whether it's athletics or whether it's an achievement in work or an achievement in creating a fantastic ministry. I mean, those are things that when you have done this, you have grown your abilities and you have done something better, and you now know that you have more confidence as a result of achieving. And those are things that I constantly recognize in regards to some people who I see, they were maybe born with a lot, but they haven't grown. They haven't achieved. In fact, if anything, maybe they haven't at all. They haven't even had any struggle to overcome. Maybe their confidences that you see in someone who had to work to achieve things because they weren't handed much when they were born, compared to an individual who had a lot. There's different levels of happiness regarding those individuals, and generally, I'm on the achievement side.
Yeah. What I mean,